Tonight I'm going to tell you about Complete Surrender and about my filmmaking projects. So in terms of how Complete Surrender started and how did I learn to make films, it's actually my first film, and I really learnt on the job, being coached by excellent filmmakers like Paul Herman, who co-directed the film with me, and also Thibaut Bailey, who is the editor of Complete Surrender. Complete Surrender, I would say that Complete Surrender is a short documentary that asks the question, what is love? And it follows 5 renowned artists as they explore how 2 female mystics, Marguerite Porete and Hadewijch, inspire fresh contemporary answers to this question, particularly where women and love are concerned. So that's what Complete Surrender is about. Favourite filmmakers is really difficult. I really admire Giuseppe Tornatore, who made Cinema Paradiso. I like Park Chan-wook, Wong Kar-wai. In terms of documentary making, I admire the work of Joshua Oppenheimer, who made The Art of Killing. And I also love the film The Cravat, which was made by Matthias Terry and Etienne Chaloux. I think it's a really clever film in which they follow somebody who in their engagement with the National Front in France. It's really interesting. So I'd love to have time to go more in depth, to work alongside the people. So in Complete Surrender, we had such a small budget. We just had to go see the people and film them. If we'd had time, we could have really gotten to know them. So I think if I had time, I would like to maybe make a film about the lives of the women in an orphanage where I once lived. I worked in Thailand and lived in an orphanage there and got to know the women in this orphanage really well. And I'd like to make a film about their lives and about the relationship between Christianity and Buddhism in their lives. They're in a kind of Christian mission which doesn't seek to convert them at all, actively doesn't seek to convert them. And so they have this kind of interesting relationship between being culturally Buddhist, but most of them not at all interested in Buddhism, and being a part of this Christian mission, which they're not necessarily engaged with. And I'd like to go and talk to them and look at that. I think that at the moment religion is playing such an important part in the way that the world is kind of the problems that we find in the world at the moment, that it's really a really important topic to look at religion. And so in all the things that I'm looking at, the idea of spirituality and religion is really important to me. Well, I think it's really important to have a realistic schedule and to build in time for making B-roll as long as the budget allows this. Because when you're making a documentary, I find it really hard to plan everything out in advance. It's as I listened to the artists in this film, for example, as we listened, they began to come up with all kinds of images, and we knew that we needed to go and find things that kind of like reflected that. I think it's really important to watch the footage after each day, to listen carefully to what's been said, and to work really closely with your DOP to see what they think will be important as the next steps. That for me is really important. To do as much planning as possible, but in documentary making, to also be open to the surprises, because sometimes the surprises are the best bits. I think for me, the hardest part, so the question is, what's the hardest part of making Complete Surrender? For me, it was working with the filmmakers. I'd never done anything like this before. And I think they found me a bit irritating because I kept wanting to do things that maybe weren't possible, or I didn't have a sense of how long things would take. But it was a really a great process for me. I learned a lot. Probably for the other filmmakers working with me was the hardest thing, but I think that it ended up being really fruitful because we brought a different kind of dynamics to the project. So the next project that I'm working on is a film that looks at the question of who we are and how we kind of manifest ourselves in the world. Again, I'm working with artists, exploring kind of existential, spiritual questions about how art helps us to come to know who we are. So we kind of have done most of the filming now, a bit more B-roll, but pretty much there. And we hope to have a rough cut by the end of the year.